Shalom, everyone. Barachot habaot, barachim habaim. Welcome, welcome. It's wonderful. Source of such gratitude to be with the IJS Chevra at the daily meditation sit, especially to share in this parsha coming up, Parshat Bo, Rosh Chodesh. We get to renew. We get to renew. What a gift from the divine. So I'd like to share a teaching from the Netivot Shalom. That's the name of the Sefer. Also, that's how we refer to the rabbi who wrote it. His name, as you see on the source sheet, on the text, his full name is Rabbi Shalom Noach Berzavsky. He actually lived here in Yerushalayim and was quite contemporary. He passed away not that long ago. He passed away in 2000. So it's quite recent Chassidut, and it is really inspiring. And I humbly offer to you my own translated adaptation. There is no translation of his works. So when I teach anything from his book, I'm invited to translate it on my own. So I hope I do it justice. So it's based on, in the beginning of Parak Yudbet, chapter 12 in this parsha, where we are introduced to the very first mitzvah that's given to the whole kehillah, the whole congregation in Mitzrayim. It's through Moses and Aharon. So in the first two verses, I'll read the Hebrew, translate, and then we'll dive right into the text. Parak Yudbet, chapter 12, Parakim, Aleph and Bet. V'yomeh Adonai el Moshe ve'el Aharon be'eretz Mitzrayim lemor. And the Eternal said to Moshe and Aharon in the land of Egypt, saying, HaChodesh hazeh lechem rosh chodashim. Now, you can translate HaChodesh hazeh either as this month or this newness from Chadash. Will be for you the beginning of a month. Rishon hu lachem, it will be the first for you, l'chodshei hashana, for the first of the year. So this month will be the first month of the year, and there's something to do with Chadash, that it will be marked as a new month. And what is that? That is the new moon. So the new moon, Chadash, hence from Chadash we have Chodesh. And I brought the Rashi down. You see in the English that this stage of Chadash, this shall be the moment of beginning the months. So you see, of course, the direct connection between new moon and new month. Now, let's move into the text. Are you ready to renew? It's all about inner self-renewal. The moon represents for us a reality that is constant and yet ever-changing in its cycles. Thus, we draw our model of our spiritual renewal from the mitzvah of noting the lunar cycle. This manifests today in the traditional ritual of what we call Kiddush HaLevana. We say it shortly after the Rosh Chodesh, a week following usually, on Motzei Shabbat, as people leave the synagogue after the end of Shabbat. And there's this amazing prayer where we recognize the moon. It's the moon prayer, during which the congregation acknowledges the presence of a newly waxing moon. Don't you just love it? It shows our connection with nature. So many of our rituals, so many of our traditions rely on a relationship and an awareness of nature. The fact that this ritual still exists becomes a springboard to cultivate spiritual renewal. So for the next half hour, as we move into the sit, let us cultivate that in terms of mindfulness. This is the mindfulness for now. It's the whole idea of being able to renew. The Netivot Shalom asks, what is unique to the lunar calendar that we do not find with the solar calendar? The lunar calendar begins from a place of darkness. You know, a lot of people today in Israel, around the world, talk about there's a lot of darkness in the world. Well, there is. Scientifically, There's this gentleman, he's an astronomer, Bob Berman. He wrote this amazing, beautiful article, Learn All About the New Moon. He said, we see the side of the moon that is not being illuminated by the sun, which makes the moon blend in with the night, with the dark night sky. So to the naked eye, the new moon is actually invisible. Spiritually, what that means is we may become despondent and despairing in that place of our own inner darkness. We may lose hope. Tikva, that's our national anthem, is tikva. How do you feel when you lose it, though? Today, people at times are really communicating, I don't know, I have to cultivate more hope. I don't want to despair. We may lose any hope that we had that we can renew. However, with patience, the very next day, we see the first sliver of the new moon. And that actually is what begins Rosh Chodesh. It's not really scientifically the new moon, it's when we can see the beginning of a new moon cycle. Its light becomes increasingly visible, as you know, as it returns to its full illumination in the sky. This continuous cycle illustrates that our capacity to renew is likewise sustainable and ongoing. In our darkest moments, chevre, our darkest moments, this is what we can draw hope from. So when you do experience those moments of despondency and maybe you despair even, just at night, look up at the moon, wherever it may be in the cycle, and draw inspiration from that. This indeed describes the life of the people of Israel. We're not like the sun. We're not sun people. The sun is bright and shining every day. I mean, clouds may screen it or shield it from us, but it's still shining on the other side of the clouds, very bright, consistently. We are moon people. We're people, that's who we are. Much of our history has been a recurring theme of suffering as we seem to be shrouded in darkness and despondency. Yet, as with the moon, our faith, our trust, and actual experience, I think that's important for all of us to honor, first of all, to acknowledge and then honor our own experience, and then our national experience, and then our global experience beckons us to remain hopeful and move through the cycle towards a renewal of light and illumination in its fullness. As we say each month in the liturgy for recognizing the new moon, it's quoted in the sources in Masechet in the Babylonian Talmud, Masechet Sanhedrin, 42a, and he directed the moon to titchadesh, renew itself. That's in the hitpael, the self-reflexive. So as a spiritual practice, cultivating mindfulness, we cultivate hitchatshut. We renew ourselves. This paradigm cultivates faith and trust in the Creator. Just as the moon waxes and wanes, yet is always present, so too one can maintain fidelity in their relationship with the divine, both during times of darkness and light. Therefore, it is fitting that the first mitzvah given was recognizing the new moon, which is the mirror image that defines the spiritual path of the budding Israelite people. Now, the Netivot Shalom explains that this mitzvah was given specifically in Egypt. We even read that in the first verse. It says in the first verse that Hashem spoke to Moses and Aaron in Egypt. Well, we knew we were in Egypt, but the text wants to emphasize that we received this specifically in Egypt because the enslaved Hebrews lived in perpetual spiritual darkness. This despair preceded the mitzvah of hope and renewal, which is the new moon. So it was so timely that the first mitzvah given to the entire Kehillah through Moses and Aharon was given in Egypt. It was precisely from this depraved, dark place that we would be redeemed. This teaching has profound ramifications on how we live our lives today. Our life journey is not set in stone. We human beings have been gifted freedom of choice. And with this gift, it's a gift. We can choose to become aware of our basic needs and then develop practices and strategies to fulfill them. And I would add to the Netivot Shalom's words, cultivating mindfulness, for example. It's never been more important than now. And someone who heard me say that recently said, I was in a shiur of yours, a class 5 years ago. You said the same thing, because 5 years ago, it was more important than perhaps ever before. Now, yes, the capacity to always be moving along the trajectory of renewing, even and specifically during those moments of emotional darkness and suffering, moves from a divine gift to what now? A basic human need. As we wane, we must wax. There's something innate that urges us. It pushes us. As we wax, we realize that even this is temporary. Once again, as the cycle of life unfolds, we shall wane and then wax again. And in conclusion, as moon people, the Jewish, that was my phrase, by the way, the Netivot Shalom didn't use that kind of language. As moon people, the Jewish people mirror the waxing and waning lunar cycles through each of our own individual experiences of sensing the Shekhinah, the divine presence in our lives. The experience itself waxes and wanes. There are days I feel so close to the divine. There are days I ask, where'd you go? You were just here. Where are you? That's the waxing and waning. At times, the Shekhinah is evident, and at other times, she remains concealed. It has always been our belief and faith that sustains us through these cycles as we move towards our ongoing practice of inner self-renewal. Let us touch that now. Let us encounter just a tidbit, just a piece, a little nugget of this capacity as we move into our silent practice, our practice of silence. This gift that the Israelite people received really does become a gift for the whole world. And I am one to suggest, and I would argue, how important it is in Isaiah's mandate that we be a light to the nation. This is what we need to share with the world. We need to share that there's the capacity to renew and invite us after we share 3 beautifully fresh, renewing, cleansing breaths together, receiving breath, pausing, returning breath, pausing. Let us move into our inner terrain and see if we can touch renewal, rejuvenate, renew, restart, renovate, and see how you feel, what feelings come up, even just imagining the possibility of that. So let us begin as we share 3 cycles of renewed breath. It's actually renewing breath. And I invite you all together, let us close the circle as we share 3 cycles: receiving, pausing and gazing, returning, pausing and gazing, renewing, rejuvenating, restarting breaths. Toda, toda l'kulam. Thank you.
Thank you, Yiscah.
Mm.
Encourage you to stick around for a chance to have a conversation with Yiscah, ask questions and offer reflections in just a moment. If you need to leave us, I'll offer you, wish you tzedchem l'shalom, farewell, and come back tomorrow or whenever, same time, same channel. We are going to give a chance now, an opportunity for those who are saying Kaddish, remembering loved ones or others to do so. If you would like to put the name of anyone that you're holding in heart or mind in the chat as we say Kaddish, please do, and we'll put the text of the prayer up on here. There we go. And then you're welcome to unmute, and you can join me in reciting the mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal,
Amen.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And please do stick around if you can. Yiscah, we'll get you back on screen. And no surprise to me that this is the part that you picked from Bo. I were going to bet. I was like, I bet Yiscah's going to go with HaChodesh Hazeh. And it's such a, I'm curious to hear from everybody, it's such a basic teaching, right? And most of our most important teachings are our most basic fundamental teachings of that every moment contains the possibility of renewal. And I wonder for yourself, as you're sort of living through, the last 100 days, right? We were talking about it before everybody came on, with your granddaughter.
102 days.
Yeah, 102. Rahman al-Islam, yeah. God help us. And I wonder, how that this very basic practice and this very basic teaching, how has that been supporting you, and how's it been challenging for you also? I can't imagine some of the most simple are also some of the most challenging practices, right? So I'd invite you to reflect on that, and for others also, Yiscah is experiencing this in Yerushalayim in your own way, but all of us are also affected in our own ways. And so I'd just be curious to open up that question. How has this been showing up, and useful and hard and all of that?
Well, all the above.
Yeah.
One of the great teachings that I draw a lot of inspiration from my daily practice, my daily living is from the Piasetzna Rebbe, Rabbi Kalonymus Kalmus Shapira. May the memory of a tzaddik be for a blessing. And he teaches about how emotions come in like a river that flows. And if we don't hold it and give it he calls it a matzah with an ayin, not the matzah we eat on Passover with if we give it a platform, a matzah, then whatever it's supposed to teach us and whatever we do with it, it happens right then and there, and then it leaves, and then the next one comes. The problem is when we don't do that, they build up. So I have found that I've been practicing now regularly for about 12 years. And it really is my most incredible resource right now, because I live literally in the moment with my feelings. And therefore, I do really believe in the power of renewal, because sometimes I can feel so either angry or feel betrayed or feel hopeless or feel overwhelmed. And now there's the mood. A lot of the people in the moods, we affect each other with the national mood. I wouldn't say it's like every single person, but there's a lot of disappointment that we thought for sure the kidnapped victims, the abductees would have been returning by now. And now there's a lot of angst over what's going on with Lebanon. And sometimes it's just so much, just that I can say that because that's what I'm feeling, that leaves. And then, but there's hope for renewal. Mm-hmm. So I'd be very cautious with myself in just approaching someone who feels overwhelmed or sad or despairing and say, oh, you got to get over it. Like, you can renew yourself. But what I wouldn't do is invite them to do what I do. And maybe it will work. Like, to sit for a moment, let your feelings be whatever they are, acknowledge them, and then see if you can go a little bit deeper. This is what I do, especially with children. It's not that I have children in this army. I have children's children in the army. So not only do I am concerned with my granddaughters in the army, but I'm concerned with their parents, because those are my children who are concerned about them. So their worry is my worries. I get it double. And then my students at Pardes, younger people who are here maybe for the first time or second time in Israel. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So I really find that the idea of renewal, I knew when I looked at the Parsha Bo, I said, that's it, it's renewal. That's what I have to share. Because this is, Josh and everyone else, this has been my spiritual food, my spiritual oxygen.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a reflection here from Noah about the waxing and waning of the moon is like the rising and falling of the breath, as if will we take another breath, and the promise with each breath, we may not reach more and more days of hostages, may each bring forward a hope for hostage release. Amen. There's a question here from Laura also, and I'll get back. There's a question above too, it is from Stephen, but this one got 3 hearts about the notion you dropped in of moon people, of Jews as moon people. You want to just elaborate on that for a minute?
Sure. Yeah, that kind of just dropped to me when I'm adding this section in my book. So I just said, okay, Hashem, give me a phrase that's like me. It was moon people. What do I mean by moon people? Well, what we learned from the Netivot Shalom was that we're more like the moon than we are like the sun when it comes to our light. Our light is not constant. I mean, the light is constant, but it's not the same light, where with the sun, it's the same light. Also, though, we're moon people because all of our chagim, all of our festivals come from the new moon, sanctifying the new moon. Shabbat, interesting, because there's this partnership. The Creator is in charge of the sun and gave us authority or some type of using the moon as the marker for the holidays. So Shabbat comes from the sun, because that's every 24 hours, the sun rises and sets. So we have that as a solar unit. But then the holidays, which is our part in the relationship, comes from whenever there's a new moon. And that's why in the Chumash, there were no names to the months. the first month, the third month, the seventh month, all relative to Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is this Rosh Chodesh being the first month of the year. So both externally and internally, we really live the life of this waxing and waning, to the point where we mark our holidays, many of which occur on the 15th, which is the full moon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's
So,
also, I think there's a lot of midrashic material, right, about the moon being reflective, right? The moon doesn't have its own light; the moon reflects the light, right? And in that way, maybe is responsive, right, as opposed to always emanating. There's gendered readings of it in terms of the moon being feminine and the sun being masculine. We can get into that. There's a lot of pieces, a lot of readings, and if you want to dig into. I'm sure I haven't looked. I should go upstairs and I'll see, but in like Sefer HaGadah, for instance, the book of legends that was compiled by Chaim Nachman Bialik, right? A great compilation of midrash material. I'm sure if you look up the moon, there's all kinds of stuff related to that, but absolutely the moon plays in many ways a bigger role. Even though I also on a daily basis, the time of our morning prayers and evening prayers are sun oriented, right? Obviously, because it's a daily thing. But on a month-to-month level, in terms of our calendar, it's mostly a lunar calendar, which we share with Islam also. The difference being that we add a month, as we do this year, right, to keep our calendar on a solar, in some relationship with the seasons.
yeah.
A lot going on there. All right. I want to make sure we don't. There was also the question that Stephen or Shimon asked. Any comment on the connection to Or Chadash of the morning prayers? The Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, that the line that we say shortly before the Shema, that we in the traditional liturgy praying for God to bring a new redemptive light into the world. Any comments?
Well, even in the first bracha, we mentioned that Hashem, in his goodness, is always creating the world anew. So therefore, the light would be new. We live daily with an Or Chadash.
Yeah.
So, and I would say the fact that the sun rises and the sun sets, which of course we know it doesn't really do that, but that's our perception of it, and that's quite consistent. That's one way of looking at the Or Chadash, that every day really is a new day. Like, look, the sun is rising, the sun is setting. Yet, in the middle of that, in the midst of that, without contradicting it, just I'd say actually enhancing this Or Chadash, there's a new lunar light every night, because that is always moving and moving and moving and moving as far up as the 15th, and then it moves down. But it's there every night also, to the way the sun is there every day. So I think the Or Chadash is like the umbrella over both of those illuminations.
Yeah, yeah. Susan asked a question about whether this inner renewal, or not asked a question, about connecting this inner renewal and specifically how it might manifest in the month of Shvat. I would also just encourage everybody, the organization At the Well, who we have frequently, we have a partnership. They come once or even twice a month now to lead sits here. Does a lot of work around Rosh Chodesh, a lot of stuff, especially for women, but certainly not limited. But yeah, I would, so themes related to each month, I would definitely encourage you to check out At the Well as well. But Yiscah, if you want to comment on Shvat and maybe its particular manifestation of renewal, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I would love to, because this year it's a little bit different, because we're first now in Israel. Winter is just begun, which is not really the way originally it was supposed to happen. Also, it is a lunar, it's a leap year, it's a Shana Mu'uberet, so there is another month of Adar. But I will tell you, in my garden, I'm very sensitive to see the new, like my daffodils are already blooming, but I know we're getting into cold weather. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. But the newness of Shvat, the leaves beginning, the fig leaves on my fig tree are beginning, and also the grape leaves, this is the time of year they begin to bud and blossom. the famous shkidiyah that all the kids go out in the schools and sing songs when the almond trees begin to blossom, that we actually physically witness here the newness in Shvat. I think this year, again, I don't know what's going to happen because of the weather changes. That being said, what happens, I find, and this is a mindful practice, and I use it in my garden gatherings, which we're gathering this Shabbat, and I will hopefully be able to invite the participants. When you look at the new buds, what do you reflect back on? It's the Creator gives us this 1 month to really, where the renewal is pronounced as the sap comes up and the buds begin to blossom and appear. What does that mean for us? And this is without a leap year, this is shortly before Purim, which is shortly before Pesach. It's already ushering in this renewed sense of redemption. That's how I've experienced Shvat. And each morning now I'm going out to check my almond tree for the beginning, like the new moon, the beginning of the appearance of the sliver.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Shvat really talks to that.
There's some other beautiful comments that have come in questions. One of which is about the Ner Tamid, right? The eternal light that's in a synagogue, usually above the ark, above the Aron Kodesh, and why it's interesting as a comment, as a contrast rather, right? That it's a Ner Tamid, it's always lit, and raising the question, like, well, maybe if to mirror the moon, shouldn't it be something that waxes and wanes or goes through phases in its own way? That's a very interesting idea. I wonder about that, and I wonder, what comes to mind for you in that?
What comes to mind for me is the verse, the pasuk in Mishlei in Proverbs, Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam, that the Ner, the lamp of God, is the soul of the person. So I'm glad my soul doesn't wax and wane. That's the one piece of me. That's my anchor. And I think that's part of the Ner Tamid, which comes also from the original menorah, always burning in the Beit HaMikdash, that it's not like the sun that's out there that's constant. It's the light that's here that's constant. So I experience it in my own practice, my own life journey and soul journey, as a different light than the moonlight. It's that spark, that little, Rav Kook calls it the nitzotz, the spark, the
divine spark within. I also wonder, the word tamid, if you want to look, where it occurs most, I believe, in the Torah is in Parshat Tetzaveh, right, describing the actions of Aaron and the high priest. And it describes actions, right? It doesn't describe things. It doesn't describe objects. It actually describes the activities of the Kohanim, things that they're supposed to perform tamid all the time. And so the light of the menorah is always supposed to be lit, and that's where we get the Ner Tamid. But it requires being lit, right? It's not like the sun that just burns; it just goes. You give it 5 billion years and it won't anymore, but like, we're not going to worry about that right now, right? But like, but the menorah has to be lit every day. That's why Hanukkah is a miracle. And so, so yes, it's there all the time, and it requires, right, it invites us to constantly be kindling that, right? We have it within us. It's always available. We also have to like turn on the light, as it were. Sometimes in our modern synagogues, it's just plugged in and you just think it goes, but that power comes from somewhere, right? And so, it might be better if we had to turn it on every day. So anyway, we are at our time, so there's always more we could talk about, but you'll be back again, so we'll be able to do it again. In the meantime, I want to wish everybody hopefully stay warm if you're cold, from my 10 degrees below here in Chicago, and stay warm wherever you are, and peaceful and healthy, and we'll be back here same time and channel tomorrow. Thanks, Jet, for holding our tech today And
Yeah.
thanks for being with us as always.
Thank you, Jen.